Hi, Melanie.
Morning, Seth. How are you?
Okay, I see I'm a.
Hey, a very warm welcome again to all of you who've been here since 9 o'clock, and for those of you who've just joined. I'm Anissa Musa, the coordinator of the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. For those of you who've been following our series, we've partnered with We Will Speak Out, Faith Action Collective, and Heartlines, particularly Marisha and Seth. Welcome again for the partnership over, I think it's on to 2 years now. Every quarter, we've been conducting workshops centered around gender-based violence and faith. So we've covered quite a bit. And this month, as we all know, is Women's Month. A lot of you working in the space have been doing great work, particularly actually 365 days, like how we say with the 16 days, which is also upon us, but also with Women's Month, although we give special attention to it. But yes, we need to and we do continue our work each and every day. And that leads me to the topic of leadership, which we will unpack going forward through the program this morning. Um, but today I want to welcome you particularly to this important gathering called Siyaya Pambile, honoring the 1956 by leading today. 70 years ago, 20,000 women marched to the Union building, declaring with courage and unity that their voices mattered. Today, we come together to reflect on that legacy and ask, how do we lead in our time? And how can faith and culture strengthen women's leadership and dignity in our communities? This session is a space to remember, to celebrate, and to equip. We will honor the women of 1956, recognize the leaders among us, reflect on the gaps that remain, and mobilize allies for the work ahead. We are privileged to be guided by facilitators from Heartlines, Faith Action Collective, and We Will Speak Out South Africa, who will help us explore our leadership rooted in justice, compassion, and allyship and how they can thrive. So we welcome you all again for joining us this morning. I'm not sure if Seth and Marisha need a formal introduction once again, but I will for those of you who haven't joined us before. So Marisha is a wounded healer, CEO of Indie Afrique, relationship and family therapist, advanced circle keeper, um, activist with Faith Action to end GBVF, and community mobilizer with Heartlines. Welcome to you, Marisha. Welcome to you, Faith, Seth as well, MD at
Thank you.
Indie Afrique, Associate and Facilitator at Heartlines, member of coordination team at Faith Action
Hello, Anissa.
NGBV, faculty and member, lots. Yes, lots. Okay, so later on, before our Honorable Reverend comes up, we will do an introduction unless you want me to introduce her at this point.
No, that's fine. I think Reverend Storia can be introduced when she arrives. She's on her way to us shortly.
All right, so without any further ado, I think I'm going to look at, for those of you who have joined, so I've spoken a lot, so I'm interested to know why is it that certainly this is a topic that aroused your interest and you took the time to join this morning. So I'm just checking for those of you who wants to unmute and share with us, why are we here? And you're more than welcome to unmute. And just share with us any expectation or any thoughts around this morning's session. Anybody? You're more than welcome to also put it in the chat. I know sometimes technology disappoints us and we have difficulty with sound or technical issues. Okay, I'm not sure, Marisha, can we, while people are still giving thought to that, I don't know if you want to maybe go on to set the container or must we give people a few more minutes?
I think maybe I can start, and then as people feel ready to share in the chat or perhaps unmute, you're welcome to. So good morning, everybody. I'm Marisha Singh Naika, and I'm with the Faith Action Collective, and we will speak out South Africa. We're an interfaith movement leading in the gender justice work and ending gender-based violence within faith spaces and communities. And so I'm grateful to be here with you this morning. I think, when we are talking about this topic, especially when it comes to faith and gender justice or gender-based violence and femicide or inequality and wanting to talk about women's equality, sometimes, we may be tired of it, like, oh, another topic on that. Or we may feel like, I can't really share what I want to share because there's always kind of the stigma attached to it, or there may be sometimes judgment. And that often is the case, certain topics are taboo in many of our faith cultures and traditions. And this morning we want to once again create a container where we are able to have a little bit of safety. And I know that's hard to say when we don't know each other and we haven't really gotten to know where you're coming from, where I'm coming from. But we are hoping that we set this container where we can understand that we are doing so out of respect, and that it's quite important, whether we agree with each other or not, that we always hold the respect. So the key to dialoguing and really getting deeper understanding, building empathy, building understanding, is to share openly and honestly, but to do so with respect and care. And when there are differences of opinions, differences of understanding, we are okay to say, please help me understand, what do you mean? And so that's important. So if you think about that container, how do we hold that? Especially when we again have those differing views or disagreements. There's a lot of different pluralities pulling people apart in our society today, from the topics of war, from the migration issue to the elections that's coming up. And then sometimes, we don't allow ourselves the space to, okay, how can we really just sit and deeply listen to each other? So the container is one of listening as well. So listening to understand instead of just listening to respond. So if you feel that you can agree with these principles of respect, of listening to each other, please give me a thumbs up to say we commit to this time of being open and honest, sharing our views with care, but also with courage. And that we are going to reserve judgment. It's not about say, oh, that church is doing it like this, or this temple, or this mosque, or this religion. That can also be quite decisive and pull us apart, but we want to honestly talk together to see how we can do this better. So that container is set, and I've seen some thumbs up. You can also say in the chat, that will be good, just what values you are bringing for our time together, because we're co-creating it together. As much as Seth and I are here, and Reverend Storia and Anissa, there are many things that you bring with you as well, that you offer your wisdom, your knowledge, your values as well. So let's put that all together in our container and hold that together. So Anissa, I see some comments coming up in the chat, so I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Marisha. So Seth's so kindly posted in the chat what our program this morning will look like. And then I've got a comment from Nelouise. Welcome, Nelouise. So Nelouise is saying, I'm here to explore my prejudices around faith at its roles and its roles around gender-based violence and femicide. Thanks for that, Nelouise. Yes, I think deep down we all have those, whether it's conscious or subconscious, those little prejudices that linger in the back of our minds around anything, whether it's any kind of diversity or anything that we don't know about, or whether it comes from a place of ignorance or it comes from our own intentional blocking, and there's probably a reason why. Also, just a request, Seth has posted some check-in questions like name, organization. I see some of you have already started to do that. Your location and expectation, purpose for joining, and what are the values that we need for our container of safety. Thank you for that, Seth. So back to you, Marisha.
Thank you, Anissa. So while you are introducing yourself, I'll just check one more time if there's anybody that wants to add anything to our container, to our time.
Yeah, Marisha, I just want to, as people are thinking, I think it'll be good to get your expectations, dear colleagues. But I would like to share with you, Marisha and Anissa, my expectations for our time. And maybe that will also help us think about, this whole topic of Siya Phambili together around the topic of 1956 and celebrating women leaders. I think one of my expectations is to learn as a faith leader about how to embrace women in faith institutions. Because a lot of the time, women are excluded in faith institutions because of the patriarchy and so on. So while I'm here presenting, I'm also interested in the learning and hearing from the people who are attendees and participants. So my hope is that we'll be participative in the chat box, or be willing to unmute our our videos if we have the bandwidth, and really be interactive. That's some of my learning expectations, so that we're not just looking at square blocks, darkened square blocks with names, if it is at all possible. So I'm giving my own round of applause for that one. If no one else is willing to give me a round of applause, can I get some hoo-has for that? Or yes, we'll participate, but that's my expectation. Full participation, and let's be here. Hey, I'm getting some love signs, some hand claps. Okay, good. So please put it in the chat box. Why did you come? What are you expecting? And if you're willing, please unmute so we can hear from you.
Thank you, Seth. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think, again, we are not experts. It's our experiences. Yes, maybe some studies that have led us on our path, but each of you have that as well. So you come with a depth of knowledge and information and experiences that would create a richness to us doing what I guess this topic is about, Siya Phambili, to move together forward. And so we are looking forward to learning with you, and I think also unlearning. When Nell Louise said, to look at some of the aspects of faith and GBV and what are we missing, sometimes a lot of what we've learned in some ways we need to unlearn. So today we're hoping some of that also takes place. So from the chat, thank you for that. People just putting in their expectations and to learn how we move forward. Thank you, Lamini about emulating those brave and courageous leaders of 1956. And that takes us this morning to this why we are together and are looking at this topic of 70 years. Now, I'm not sure if there are any that are in that age group, but I would love to sit and listen to someone who was around at that time and what was going on. And hopefully today, maybe there are some here. I'm not sure of our different ages, or maybe even your parents or who've shared stories. So you're welcome to share that. And as you are thinking through that, we're going to be just looking at a 5-minute video, bringing us up to speed and capturing. And Times Alive has shared this. What happened on that day on 9th August 1956? And I think they do a good job in talking about the 20,000 women. But remember, those 20,000 women then also came with 100,000 signatures. And remember, this was done in a time where, you don't have this. You don't have instant messaging. You don't have WhatsApp and sending out information. They went door to door for 1,000 signatures. What did it take? I can't even imagine that. If we had to say, let's get this movement going, we need 1,000 signatures. Even when we send stuff on WhatsApp now, please sign. We still can't get there, but they did it with none of the technology that we have today. So it really stops us and arrests us to say, let's really think about what strategies do they use, what can we learn from them. So Seth, if you could please start us off with that video, and then we'll just spend a moment just reflecting as you watch and listen to that video this morning. That looks good.
For 30 minutes, they stood in complete silence. In a country where black voices were ignored, their silence became impossible to ignore. It was not empty. It carried generations of pain. 70 years later, their names cannot be forgotten. Lillian Ngoyi, she was the voice that rallied thousands, a trade unionist, a mother, and a fearless leader. Lillian Ngoyi became the first woman elected to the African National Congress's National Executive Committee. She believed that freedom was never given. It had to be demanded. On August 9, 1956, she helped lead more than 20,000 women to the Union buildings, proving that courage can move a nation. Helen Joseph, she chose justice over privilege. Helen Joseph dedicated her life to challenging apartheid. She co-authored the Women's Charter and became one of the principal organizers of the Women's March. Rahima Musa, she believed compassion was a form of resistance. Rahima Musa devoted her life to serving workers, families, and communities while standing against apartheid's injustice. As one of the march's organizers, she reminded the nation that strength is measured not by power, but by perseverance. Sophie Williams, the brain. She was only 18.
50 years ago, we are standing here at a place that we came to that was unfriendly to us.
The youngest of the four leaders, yet she walked with the confidence of someone who knew history was being written beneath her feet.
Because I was only 18 years old then, and many of my compatriots are sadly no longer with us. It has always been an honor to represent the collective leadership of the march and the 20,000 women. I'm standing here as their representative. We were young, we were afraid, but we were unified and determined. When we stood undaunted in silence for 30 minutes, the world trembled, it took note. We confronted the apartheid regime and boldly said, Stridum, you have targeted the woman, you have struck a rock, and we will crush you. We fought to banish the past laws, yet today our women are prisoners in their own homes. Gender-based violence continues to cast a dark cloud on our society. And every single day I weep for the girl child, the daughters, the mothers, and grandmothers who are abused, violated, and silenced.
Their leadership transformed a march into a movement, and 7 decades later, their names cannot be forgotten.
Thank you, Seth. So that gives us a little bit of what happened on that day, and then the 4 main women leaders that led that march. What do you think it must have taken for them to get the 20,000 women in Pretoria that day? Women who came from all walks of life, different ages, different races, different vocations, to the union buildings, and then came with 100,000 signatures as well. And again, when there wasn't all the technology available, a very oppressive time. I mean, you couldn't even move in certain places if you were a Black person. And it was just amazing how that unified approach that they talked about. And those 4 women as well had different religious traditions that was represented even in that aspect. So that was really beautiful to note that this morning, even as I thought about that. And what was amazing to see, even when I was looking at the history in sahistory.org, it talks about how each of them came with their different, whether they were faith leaders in their faith dress or traditional dress, or they were domestic workers. Some of them even came with their white bosses' babies on their backs. Brought them to the march because they were domestic workers and needing to care for the children, but had to be at the march. So there's a few pictures even of that, of a Black woman, domestic woman, at that time carrying their employers' babies on their backs. And that just shows what it must have taken just for people in their commitment and dedication. So this morning, as you reflect on it, please, is there anybody that as they were watching that would like to just comment? Maybe we'll take one or two comments on what came out for them in that march. You're welcome to put it on the chat. I did see someone earlier put on the chat.
So there are a couple of comments, not particularly about the video, but also, I think also around expectations that Seth asked earlier, Marisha. So I don't know if you want me to go through them or...
Yes, please, Anissa.
Okay, so I've got from Claire, just forgive my pronunciation here, Claire Lo. Okay, so the expectation is to learn how faith institutions maneuver around issues of gender-based violence and femicide. Then I've got Emin Glamini saying, my expectation is to learn on how we move forward in emulating those brave and courageous leaders of 1956. Yes, clearly role models and leaders. And then Lizette shares an experience on the chat. She says, I recently met Auntie Sophie this year at Tears Foundation, and I was absolutely blown away by her presence. She's so beautiful inside and out. She was a teenager when she participated in the march and was part of the core leaders. It was just incredible. I'm on my and okay, so she's got some technical issues, but thank you for sharing that and however way you can participate. We appreciate the contributions. I don't know if anybody's experiencing an echo, but Emin Lamini is. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, then Louise also goes on to say, respect for the women. Imagine women standing up in their thousands today in front of the president demanding our freedom from gender-based violence. Yes, so it was a very brave, courageous, and determined action, I would say. And then I have Kelly Borney saying, my expectation is to have better understanding of gender-based violence and femicide and how to create a safe space for women and children in our society. So those are just some expectations, just to bring it to the fore.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for those contributions. So quickly to let you know, Auntie Sophie will be speaking again on Thursday at UNISA, and that's open to everybody. UNISA is holding a conference, and that's happening on Thursday at 9 o'clock. So if you do want more information, just let me know on the chat. I will look for the post and send it on there. And then the SACC is also doing a march, which I will also post on the chat, registration for that. And it's actually a prayer walk that they are doing with women on Saturday morning at women are gathering at 6:30. Well, everybody is gathering, whoever. It's not exclusively for women, but women will be marching together, and they will be at the union buildings and then going to a nearby Methodist church. They will be handing over a memorandum to government. We're not sure who in government will be there, but I know someone said, imagine 1,000 women marching and handing to government about GBV and those issues. And that's what's on the agenda, to hand that over. So, Neil Louise, I think you said you're in Cape Town, but if you're in Pretoria this weekend, you're welcome to join that march and stand in front and also hand that over, and everybody's invited. So while Seth is speaking later, I'm going to look for those invites and put it on the chat. But I just want to close this time. Anissa?
Sorry. So there is another comment from Pamela, but you were speaking about women marching, and I must say, and I'm also proud to say that Dr. Zubaida Dango, who is also the head of executive of the National Charter Movement of South Africa, is also engaged in multiple petitions and presenting MOUs to the government and to the president. So, I think for me, it's something that we, on an ongoing basis, every now and again, that was 70 years ago about the passes. Today, we're still having to stand up and raise our voices for issues that we feel are important to us. And also, as I came maybe a couple of generations after that, but just later on realizing, and when I remember when we were very, very young in the apartheid times, there were differences in spaces. I do know about the passes, but little things like the saying about you strike a woman, you strike a rock is something we grew up with, and then later on you come to realize where it came from. But also, I grew up in the Mayfair Fordsburg area, and my mom for many years was a patient at the initially was J.G. Stradham Hospital, and I didn't know, we don't know the background. And then later became Helen Joseph. And Rahima Musa Coronation became Rahima Musa Hospital. And it's those little things growing up that we took for granted. For decades, we were celebrating the 9th of August as a public holiday. We called it Women's Day, and later on we learn where it comes from, the origins, and why that was. So yeah, and I think it's part of South African history. It's part of our history, and it's something that definitely has an influence on our lives. But without any further ado, I'm going to share Pamela's comment there before we proceed. And she's saying that what stands out to me is that these women were not simply protesting a law. They were ordinary women collectively challenging a system that affected their freedom, their families from different backgrounds, and stood together. I think they stood together and made their action especially powerful. For me, the strongest lesson is change can begin when ordinary people recognize that something is unjust and decide to stand together. Thank you, Pamela. Very strong statement. And then Kashifa, welcome, Kashifa. Kashifa goes on to say, thank you for those women in 1956 who set the path for us women working with gender-based violence. So yes, the change that those brave actions resulted in. And again, to remember that whatever we do today could influence the future, just the way they did.
Thank you so much, Anissa. So absolutely, and thank you, Pamela, for that powerful statement. And I think this is what we want to, in terms of celebrating the woman and remembering them, but also making sure that the legacy that they have passed on to us continues in powerful ways, continues in loving and compassionate ways where the transformation happens. And Pamela, you said it so beautifully that it's just ordinary people just taking one step, just doing one little thing. And I encourage you to think about that even as you sit here today. What is the one thing? And you may be doing a lot as social workers in your communities, as faith leaders. And sometimes it may just seem so overwhelming. Are things changing? Are things moving ahead? And a little later on, we'll share some of those things. What are the changes that we are seeing? That the women in 1956, what we are really standing on their shoulders. They've really pushed us ahead, in moving some things. But what are some of the things that are just going too slow? So we'll definitely look at that. I just want to end with what the Amit Kathrada Foundation is doing. And I'll post this on our chat. And they are asking who were the 20,000 women. And this is the unfortunate thing about when it comes to women's movements or even when it comes to information concerning women, whether it's about our bodies, our health, and getting information, it's always done mainly for the standard or the benefit of men. And we don't have enough information. And this is why it becomes so important to find out who were those 20,000 women. The Amit Kathrada Foundation has started that list. And if you know of a woman that was there, please do submit her name because they want to collect these names and to honor them and to say these were the women. They are just not faceless and nameless. They are women with lived, embodied realities of pain, of joy, of celebration, of strength, of courage and dignity. So I'll leave that on the chat there. Please do pass that on. We remember them today, we celebrate them today, and we thank them immensely for their courage and for what it took for them to making sure that we in many spaces could now even be together when they couldn't at that time. So thank you so much for that. At this time, we're going to move it to Seth, who's going to be holding a space for us in going a little deeper about hearing from women leaders, some of them faith leaders. I'm not sure if Reverend Storia is here, so I'm going to hand back over to Anissa, who can perhaps share Reverend Storia's bio. Reverend Storia, are you here with us?
Yes, Marisha, I'm here.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So Anissa, back over to you.
Marisha, would you like me to introduce Storia, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm honored to do this morning. Thank you. Reverend Storia Sitisho is a retired South African minister of the Methodist Church of Southern Africa and a prominent feminist theologian. Background in ministry, active ministry. She served as an ordained minister in the Methodist Church before retiring from active ministry in 2022. During her active service, she worked in regions such as the city of Tshwane, Gauteng, and with communities like the Sinoville Methodist Church. Her theological focus, her work centers on feminist theology, advocating for human dignity, equality, love, and social justice, with a specific emphasis on protecting vulnerable groups like women and children. Her activism and leadership, she's involved in We Will Speak Out South Africa, an organization working to end gender-based violence and femicide, like Seth and Marisha. Public writing and speaking, she frequently contributes commentary and articles addressing gender equality, human rights, and social justice in South Africa, often collaborating on public discourse surrounding women's rights and the ongoing legacy of inequality. A very warm welcome to you this morning, Reverend. We're honored to have you for our session today.
Well, good morning, Reverend Storia, and thank you, Anissa, for the beautiful introduction. If Anissa and Marisha and Anissa are willing at this time to please switch on their videos, because we're going to be in kind of a panel discussion with the three of them. So, and Marisha as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are actively participating, I can still see some people are a little bit quiet, and that's okay. I hope you're listening and learning and possibly between spaces. We are grateful to have 39 of us here. I think that needs a round of applause. Yes, a beautiful round of applause. Thank you for making it here. And we have with us our honorable leaders, Reverend Storia Sitisho, Marisha, who also serves within the faith space as a pastor, and Anissa, while working at the National Shelter Movement of South Africa, also carries with her a faith relatedness in her journey as a social worker, yes, but a social worker with a focus around gender justice and bringing community change. So today, won't you please join me, colleagues, to honorably welcome and bring together these voices for us by giving them a round of applause here at our National Shelter Movement of South Africa online Siapambili conference. Yes, give them those round of applause. They must know that we are excited they've arrived to share with us. I have a picture to show you, and then I'll take it off because then we don't have to do death by PowerPoint. But it was kind of a modernized picture of the 1956 march, and I hope that you enjoy the picture, kind of using some technology, giving it a piece. But the question that is asked today, as we grew up, what did we hear about the Women's March on 9th June 1956? Okay, so as we grew up, what did we hear about the march on 9th August 1956? And then, as a female leader and faith leader, what challenges did you face, and how did you overcome them? So, firstly, just what we heard. And I mean, we've watched a video today. We've heard about the names of these leaders, 4 courageous women, 20,000 others. One thing that stood out for me was a new learning of the 30 seconds of silence. Was it not 30 seconds? 30 minutes of silence that was put out in the video. That silence was a revolutionary act that got the world knowing that these ladies mean business. Okay, so that's the questions that we have for ourselves. I'm going to stop the share. It's also in our chat box, and you're welcome to reflect on it as well as you do. So, Reverend Storia, if you are there, I'd like to ask to begin with our time of sharing as we reflect on the March of 9th August 1956. And what do you remember, or what did you grow up hearing about? Rev, are you there? And if you can, please turn on your video. We like to see you at this time, and I'll turn it into speaker view. There we go.
I am here. Apologies for being late. I just, there's, Pastor Reverend Bulefe passed. The funeral is today. So
Our sincere condolences to you and the community in
I,
Orlando.
yeah, so I went for the early part. They are still continuing there. So when I just got a chance to get out, I thought I was going to come out around 9:15, but by that time they were just busy they were very in the middle of the sermon, so I couldn't leave. So I thought, let me come later. But anyway, yeah, we worked with him. You know him. You and Marisha know him. So unfortunately, yes. But anyway, let me sort of just maybe get onto it. Thank you very much for the beautiful introduction. Sometimes when people introduce you, you ask yourself, who are they talking about? It's just like it's like something that we have never heard before. But anyway,
as she says that, I always have. We had a national campaign, and when I heard her name, because the national campaign was called "What's Your Story," and then I heard when I met Reverend Storia for the first time, changed the campaign to "What's Your Storia." So yes, thank you. We are here, and today, as we move into this conversation, and our sincere condolences to Reverend Molefe. Friends, who she is referring to, Reverend Storia, that is Reverend Molefe, just recently, as of May, was a part of the launch of an initiative called Beyond Apology, which is actually founded by Reverend Storia, and I had the honor, together with Marisha and herself, to be there at the launch. And Reverend Molefe was part of the time. So maybe if I can just ask, before we continue into this conversation, just to pause for 30 seconds of silence.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Oh God, today as we gather, we are mindful that we come from different traditions, different walks of life. Please be with the family of Reverend Molefe this morning. Thank you that as a minister, Reverend Molefe was able to be a part of this launch, and we pray that the work that continues in the community of Orlando West and around Soweto through Reverend Storia will continue by your grace and your mercy. Even as we have this conversation now, and try to be lighthearted and also sharing and celebrating the voices and the lives of women who continue. Not only did they do in 1956, but they continue to do the work of justice and well-being for our families and our communities. Be with us, we pray. And all of us say together, Amen and Amin.
Amen. Amen.
Yes, so Rev, there are some
And
people that are in the box, but for you and Marisha and Anissa, the first one is, what did you grow up about hearing when you think about the march on 9th August 1956? And while you are getting ready, Rev, to respond, Nell Louise Pollock says, I am white, 55 years old, and we heard absolutely nothing about it. Nothing about this was taught in school, and no discussion about it at all in our communities. It was only after I left school and discovered the real history of my country that I learned the story of that important day. Wow. Thank you, Nell, for letting us into your world and your own story. Nell Louise Pollock, thank you so much. I think Lizette Rosen reacted as well, and she said, what stands out to me is these women were not simply protesting a law, they were ordinary women collectively challenging a system that affected their freedom, families, and dignity. The fact that women from other different backgrounds stood together makes their action especially powerful. For me, the strongest lesson is change can begin with ordinary people recognize that something is unjust and decide to stand together with. So yes, Reverend
That's
Storia.
Pamela. That's Pamela's comment.
Oh, was that Pamela's?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Anissa
you,
had read
Pamela.
it earlier.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so Rev, so who's Lizette? I see Lizette is posting, is it posting from participants into the panel? Thank you. I guess that's what's happening, right? And maybe Lizette, when you post, you can also just put the comment of the person's name. So I don't know how that's going down. All right,
So
Reverend Storia, what say you?
I
What do
think
you
we are up to date with the chat box, right? So I
Okay,
think
cool.
only now one came in. Let me just check. Okay. All right.
Great
Thank
stuff.
you, Lizette, for reacting to Pam's comment, right? So we should be up to date with the chat box.
Thank you, and we'll return. But for now, let us hear from these panelists. Reverend Storia, what's your story about 9th
hey,
August 1956? Tell me your story.
you know what? I wish I was present in that 1956, or my mom was still highly pregnant with me. I was born on the 14th of February of 1957, so I'm turning 70 next year. So I really heard that, especially I heard mostly from my grandmother and from my grandmother-in-law about what the day was. They say, you know, most of them were in Alexander. And they say in the morning, the organization for the day was such that they bought tickets because they were not allowed to. Apparently, the apartheid government knew that they were going to be using for the march, and they sort of blocked the buses, you know, for taking people to Pretoria. So what they did is they decided that they will buy train tickets. So they bought train tickets and they distributed train tickets to the women in Alexander, came to Soweto, you know, gave it to other leaders in Soweto. Those gave whoever was a leader wherever. Even in the Free State, they had to buy tickets, and the organizers in Free State organized, you know, bought tickets for the people wherever, Klerksdorp, wherever people were. They used means of transport, but mostly trains, because there were no taxis as well. So they organized it in that way. Very few came by buses and to be dropped out there. But Marisha has pointed something very crucial that also, and I'm, you know, I'm writing a chapter. UNISA is writing a book on the 1956 march. So they've asked me to contribute a chapter. So I'm busy with that chapter. So researching for that chapter, I was also, but I'm amazed at how they organized. Because for me, if they managed to have almost 20,000 people or about 20,000 people, it means they had spoken and mobilized more than 20,000 people. Obviously, doubled the number. But if you actually look at how they did it, the mobilization you look at it, it actually started, the mobilization of women started around 1913. And by 1953, they were organized in their respective, either their domestic whatever influences. They had those small little communities where they belonged in. So there was the labor movement, there was the normal women church organizations. They were those who were like this. Helen Joseph was social worker. So she used to, when she was doing social work in the broader spaces where she would go, she would be organizing. The other one, Frances Bart, was from Kimberley, so she would travel to Kimberley. You know, everybody did what they could do. She would travel to Kimberley to go mobilize in Kimberley. She was also from I think it was the domestic there, as if she's going to teach women to sew or to do something that the domestic that was accepted and acceptable for the white people to know that Africans are taught, you know, to be domestic servants and whatever. So they used whatever was available to them to mobilize. And Helen Joseph, because he was white and she also had the social work background, did the work, especially of organizing, you know, printing whatever need to be printed, travel in the night if she had to travel in the night, because she also had a car. So that was what mostly helped, you know, the mobilization of that. And I think it was 1952, they had a conference from all these organizations, this social organization, the social bodies that they had. They came about 142 women who you know, came together in one place, and they spoke about what the plan is going to be. So wherever you were, as far as Eastern Cape and wherever, Cape Town, whatever, wherever you are, you would also plant a seed to send out information as to this is what we're thinking, this is how we're going to be doing. Because when they started, they were not only going to be doing the pass laws. They were interested in the education for children, health, and many other, you know, social challenges that the communities were having. But when 1955 or 1950, whatever, or 1955, I think. Maybe I'm confused because I didn't think about the question, this question now. Then Stradom said he's going to be passing the law of the, you know, pass law and the restrictions of movement and whatever. Then that's what then isolated the pass laws. Then they decided, okay, we're going to leave every other law because it's not urgent for it. We were going to prioritize this one. So they prioritized the pass law. What is very interesting is that they used a concept called public womanhood or public motherhood. Public motherhood. Public motherhood and from a familial authority. These were the women who were saying, it doesn't matter whether I have a child, it doesn't matter whether I am married, I am a mother. But the fact that God has created me a woman, God has created me for a caring responsibility for it.
Rev, you must maybe pause your video because of the bandwidth. So if we're listening and have listened well, we hear about the movement of trains and buses.
Yeah.
We hear about changes of plans. Rev, if you want to pause your video, you can, because your bandwidth cut you out there.
Okay.
So we can hear you.
It's fine.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we
is it
hear,
okay now?
we also hear, yes, it's okay. And we also hear about this notion of public womanhood and
Yes.
and yes. So
Yeah.
but we'll return to that now, Reverend Storia. Let me bring Anissa in at this time and just ask, Anissa, Reverend Storia, clearly, firstly, I just want to say to her, she says she's turning 70 next year. I don't believe her. She only looks like she's turning, 50. No, I'm kidding. But 70 will be celebrated for her, and she was born a year after 1956. So Rev, you must being born in the year. But let's ask Anissa. Anissa, what did you grow up hearing about the woman of 9th August 1956 and the march, this historic march? Please unmute, Anissa. Otherwise, you'll be talking only to yourself.
Sorry
There we
about
go.
that. Okay, I often put myself on mute because you just never know with the distractions in the unstable network. Okay, thanks for that. Unfortunately, I don't have that much to share on it because again, like now, Louise, I think we were also somewhat sheltered, protected. It wasn't openly discussed. We heard little bits of and pieces of information here and there. Like I mentioned earlier, we only later we realized as we grew up or as we were growing up why certain names of public institutions like hospitals were changed. Why were they initially named the way they were? Why we celebrated a certain holiday, the details of which were not always openly discussed. I think also my mum was very little at the time of the march. My grandparents were from India and they didn't speak English. So it came with those kind of and I think also even when I did some homework about it, we know that the minister also um, was not present, and there was obviously quite a bit of denial and avoidance or not wanting to address issues. But these women, nonetheless, no matter what challenges they had to go through, even in putting it together. In fact, even I think at the time, I don't think even the men had enough confidence in these women to pull this march off. Also concerned about the brutality and the safety around it, but these women didn't let that stop them. Like our Reverend pointed out, there had to be lots of work done before that in preparation for such a big event and for it to leave such lasting impact. It wasn't just something where you get 20,000 women together. No, it took years and years of preparation, whether it was just mental, whether it was just emotional, those shifts always, and I've always believed that before empowerment, there has to be mobilization. And I know that Reverend used that word quite strongly. You have to mobilize people. And mobilizing is not even just about physically mobilizing people, but it's also about mentally and, like I said, emotionally shifting people's attitudes, their thoughts, with the realization that something is not right, the realization that we want change, the realization that we need to do something to bring about that change. And that's what these women did, despite knowing the risks. It was huge for those of us who, even on the tail end of apartheid, know the risks with that. We know that politically they were daring, they took great chances, but clearly it was important for them. And it was an important statement that they needed to make about women and the freedom of women.
Cool. Nisa, thank you. And I hope you were listening. Reverend Storia told us that Helen Joseph was a social worker. And you having known some bit of your own journey, you too know social work. And she utilizes this terminology of community organizing, people moving around and so on and so forth. Rev, if you're there, you can get ready to come back in a minute or two. Marisha, I want to turn to you. Here you are in a different land space, possibly in KZN. Anissa spoke about growing up in Fordsburg, isn't it, Anissa?
That's right, Seth. Fordsburg.
Fordsburg. Reverend Storia, knowing her, a little bit of her story, a lot of our story actually is around Soweto. So yeah, Marisha, you were in and around KZN growing up. What did you hear about the march growing up, and what was that collective memory that possibly you gathered from your family and stories in the community?
Thank you, Seth. And thank you, Reverend Story. I just wanted to hear more and more about what you were sharing. So looking forward to getting back to you. But let me quickly say, for my upbringing as well, growing up, I think in some ways, because of the apartheid time, there was only so much that could be shared. But in primary school, I hardly remember much about, anything about the historical context. Yet we were facing it, but we didn't talk about it in school. But we did talk about it in my family. My gran was a domestic worker in a white person's house, and my dad was also worked as carrying people's bags at for white people. And so you would hear all of these different stories, but only behind closed doors. And then we had moved to Johannesburg, and when I got to high school was when we started to hear some of the more intense political situations, what was going on. I remember one particular teacher at school, Mr. Suji, closing the doors in our classroom and said, "Let me tell you what's really going on in our country," and then would tell us, the correct history, not the ones that they were told that they must teach us. And that's when I heard the phrase, you strike a woman, you strike a rock, and that was the reality of what this all was about. But prior to that, I didn't. But when there were courageous voices who were able to, even in the midst of apartheid, to pass on that knowledge to the younger generation, and at the detriment to their own jobs, because had a HOD walked by, or had somebody come by and found out that this is what he was really teaching us, or what the history lesson was really about, he probably would have been fired. I mean, him himself shared when he was in prison and what was done to them because they, protested or rioted, and those things that was going on in the 70s and 80s. And so that's just a little of what I had found out. But I think that struck with me about there are women who did stand up in the midst of apartheid, who did come together. And for me as a woman, that was very powerful for me.
Yes, and we must be grateful, Marisha, for the teachers and educators that took the time, because I can imagine that act would have been an act of revolt against the government, trying to educate children about apartheid. So those of you that, I don't know, there might be some born frees here on the Zoom with us today in the conference, and that was what took place in the apartheid era. That teachers were not allowed to talk freely about what was going on, and if they had a viewpoint that tried to educate children in any way, shape, or form politically, their lives could be placed in danger. So, Revstoria, let's try and see if we can get you back on video, and if your bandwidth has pulled itself together. You ended up talking about this public womanhood or public motherhood, and as we call you back, Rev, I want to ask, was there someone in your family that marched, or have you ever met someone who marched? And while I'm asking Rev to reflect on that and take us into our own life, I'm going to ask you all, if you do know someone who marched, or someone in your family that was actually there, please put it into the chat box, and maybe you all can share as well short insights of what you remember. Okay, so Rev, maybe you can just tell us about that. Was there someone that you knew? And then we'd like to just, in a minute or two, ask of your experience. You've been a minister. Now, because I know Reverend Storia as a very good elder to me and a senior minister to in the work that I do, she's also been a corporate worker. She worked corporately. She worked in transport and logistics. So her life transitioned between spaces and then came into the service of the Methodist Church as an ordained priest. So, Rev, the question to you there as you move from your own reflections of, who you knew from August 9th, we want to ask you, what were some of the difficulties you faced? What was the challenges that you faced as a woman leader, and how did you overcome them? So over to you, Reverend Storia.
Yeah. No, thank you. My grandmother-in-law marched because she was selling beer. She was making this beer, Nkomboti, and she was selling it in the township. So she would always be be arrested for it. She would always be arrested for it. And she says she was so fed up with this thing. When the time came for marching, she really wanted to go and do it, because also she was going to be forced to carry a pass when she did not need to go anywhere. But because she was a pass was going to mean that she has got permission to be in Johannesburg. Otherwise, she was supposed to be living in the reserves. And my grandfather-in-law had passed away, and for some reason she was not forced. She did not allow herself to be forced to get married, because they used to be forced to get married. You know what they did? When your husband dies and you have a home, there was a pass, the home affairs, like at Albert Street, that used to be at Albert Street when we were growing up. He says they will take them to Albert Street and they will put hats, just the hats, at random hats, and you go and pick up a hat. And when you pick up that hat is the man who is going to marry you.
I'm sure Reverend Storia's bandwidth will come back, but she was just sharing with us the context of, what women had to do if the husband had passed on and was a homeowner. And I think where she was going to, because I know that for some of us in our own cultural backgrounds, a woman doesn't have rights to land and property without husband. Culturally, this should not be the case in a democracy, but even in apartheid and within our own tribal cultural settings, these are some of the injustices that women had to face. When Reverend Storia comes back, we'll tap into some of what she said. Thank you, M.N. Dlamini, for your sharing, and we are also grateful that you've come into this activism of your work. There is a hand that is up, and I'll go there in a bit. But let me, in the meanwhile, before Reverend Storia comes back, ask Marisha to come back, and I'll go to Anissa. Marisha, sharp and short, to the point. What is some most critical challenges you faced as a faith leader, as a woman in your professional experience of work that you've done both in South Africa and abroad, and how have you overcome them? And I'll ask Anissa then to come
Thank
in
you.
after you as well.
Thank you, Seth. So I can also identify that story of Reverend Storia's grandmom-in-law. My grandmother was 14 when she got married and met her husband on the day she got married. So that's my nanny. And that's just, 2 generations ago. So thank God I wasn't in that situation. My mom and dad was semi-arranged marriage, but I could choose my partner. So I didn't face that kind of, I think, inequality where I couldn't, have my rights. I could, as my grandmom did. And so I'm grateful for that. But some of the things was, like, my dad had 4 daughters, and he would always be looked down upon because he didn't have a son. That you always had to have a son because sons were very important. And if you don't have a son, then there's something wrong with you. So I kind of grew up around a little bit about that whole thing that, girls were not valued as much as boys. The other thing was that I grew up in a faith space where in Hinduism and then also within Christianity. And has me wanting to be a faith leader was said, no, you can't be a faith leader because you're female. You can be maybe like a teaching children, so more the roles of caring roles, the ones of domestic roles. But as a faith leader in the church that I grew up, it said, no, you can't be a faith leader. So that's been some of my experience with that.
And today you have become a faith leader. So clearly you decided not to listen to the people who told you could or couldn't. Right, Marisha?
Yes, yes, yes. So that's some of the things of how I overcame it was that I think finding my own spaces where I could be valued, my giftings, my strengths, and then also, look, it's still a challenge because in the church that I still grew up, they don't ordain women as faith leaders. So I had to move to another church. But there's still, many kind of hoops that you have to jump through as a faith leader and be recognized that you, as a woman, have the capabilities, the God-given capabilities to be as much as a leader as a man is able to.
Well, thank you for that, Marisha. For some folk, they might even say that sounds a bit, controversial, and so on. But if you are here today, that's kind of the reality of living in a democracy. There shouldn't be limitations placed on people's skills and talents because of their gender identity, whether they are male or female, whether they carry other gender identities as well. Anissa, as a faith leader in your own rights, as a woman of faith doing the work that you do as a social worker, what have been some of the challenges you faced, and how have you overcome them?
Thank you for that, Seth. Thank you to Reverend Storia and Marisha. I think they are, our upbringing and even our work paths play a big role in shaping who we are. As a social worker, and also, before I started at the National Shelter Movement of South Africa, I worked in a faith-based organization for many, many years. In fact, straight after I came out of university, I worked in the faith-based sector. And I think one of the greatest challenges is the thinking, the attitudes, the beliefs, the myths, and almost like we misguided or we surrounded by selective use of different belief systems, even in a faith-based setting. But also, I think one of the biggest lessons was the difference between or separating cultural practices and religious beliefs, and how that takes shape in our own lives and the paths that we follow. But I think for me, if I as you as Marisha and Reverend was speaking and Seth, as you were asking me questions, and I was really reflecting on that. And I think, strangely enough, I think, how they say that you thrive in adversity, and I think that's a story that a lot of us can share about how our adversities got us to the places that we are in now. Like, take for a simple example, and I'm sure lots of you also sitting in this room, including Marisha and Reverend, and even Seth yourself, we came from, I wouldn't say, and obviously it's different for different people, but the level of privilege that we had, or the level of opportunity that forced us to tap into our internal strengths. It forced us to go out there and get educated. It forced us to go out there and find work, to become independent. And in so doing, with the education, with the awareness, with the exposure to different people in different settings, I think you start to question and you start to look at things differently. But also for me, I think I also saw a lot of strength in women around me. And that would include my mother. And that was motivational. Also, life experiences, even in relationships where you see imbalances. I'm going to call them imbalances. We could go as far as calling them injustices, even. And then you forced to look within yourself and build resilience. But also, then it forces you to reflect on those beliefs, on the upbringing. I think for me, I was fortunate where it wasn't so I wouldn't go as far as calling it an injustice. I would more lean towards the imbalance. But still, you could see it. And maybe it wasn't like that for me, but I could see around me lots of women who faced challenges that were different to mine, similar to mine, but maybe more extreme. And so, yes, then as you go forward, you start to bring about those changes. And even and I think even with Marisha and with Reverend Storia, we have the opportunities in our roles and in our work to be able to support other women and to develop them. And so that for me is a big opportunity where we can influence positively and bring about change.
Wow. Thank you, Anissa. And I loved when you made reference to the systems that you end up being in. And sometimes systems can really either be systems that help you grow or systems that can help you shrink. Systems that can be life-giving or systems that can be detrimental to you. So be aware of organizations today, what our colleagues are referring today to while we look at the March of 1956 and we watch that video. We still live in a toxic culture of patriarchy. I know that for many men, sometimes this is not a nice topic to address, and also for faith leaders because we don't want to acknowledge. In fact, there's a countercultural kind of narrative where people are saying, so much focus on women. What about men? I mean, the truth is, I think men themselves are in a mess, and we're going to come into that when we talk about the work of allyship and then even working with men and boys. But we want to thank Nisa, Marisha, and Reverend Storia, who I think hasn't managed to come back, for just taking us into
I am here.
the insights. Oh, you are back. Rev, you get the final say. But before you do, Cornelia, your hand has been up. I'm sure your digital hand must be tired of waiting. I want to just give you a chance to speak. So please, won't you unmute and share with us either your comment or your question? Please, Cornelia Mahako. Can we ask you to unmute, or do you have a question?
Cornelia, if you're having difficulty, Seth, we can wait a little while for Cornelia to come on.
She
But
says, okay,
also,
Cornelia says it's an error. Okay, it was a hand. I think
okay,
it was one of those hands, like, like right on. It was like a right on hand. Storia, it seemed
we
like it
also
could have been,
have. We do
yes, it
have
could
a
have,
comment from while we are, responding to people. We
yes,
have a comment from Emin Dlamini. Would you like me
yes.
to go ahead and read it?
I think
Okay,
I
so,
summarized that earlier, Nisa, but you can
okay,
read the
okay.
full comment if you'd like.
All right, so I feel sad thinking about the fact that growing up, I didn't know or hear anything about politics, activism, even though we grew up in the middle of gross apartheid in neighboring towns around us in Ramsgate, Margate, with separate beaches, buying through small windows in restaurants. The experience of it was all around us. But I'm so honored and grateful to God that my salvation has brought me to this activism, and I take it so seriously. Yeah, and I think, I think Marisha also said something about, us having been brought up without being told a lot of things. And I used the word earlier, we were almost protected or isolated from it. But I think there was also another reason, and I know that sometimes our parents or even grandparents were too afraid. I know that I do have a family member who's now living in Australia. He spoke he spoke about why he left South Africa and the brutality, particularly against women. He lived across from a police station, and he said that late at night there would be women who were leaving there. Marisha mentioned earlier that her mom worked as a domestic in one of the houses, and so he would talk about the fact that he would see women leave their workplaces who were brutally assaulted by their employers, who would come for refuge and help. And yeah, I think that for me was also an eye opener. It was real, it made it quite real. But also, and you know, you spoke earlier about teachers. And I remember we were sent on excursion to go and watch the movie Sarafina back then. And that also spoke about the brutalities. But I think for women, it was more than it was apartheid, but it was also being a woman during apartheid that I think intensified the trauma and the need to stand up.
Yes, thank you, Anissa, and thank you for sharing with us the thoughts of Em and Lamini. Thank you for sharing about that reality. So many of us kind of just accepted it as it was, but yes, today we have a new chance to see life again in a different way. Reverend Storia, I know how to bring this to close. We visited the past, reflecting on the March of 9th August 1956. You gave us some insights. Please close us out from our panel discussion. So, Rev, over to you as you have the final words. Please unmute Reverend Storia. Here we go. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Where are we now? Am I on my story?
Well, we completed that. We moved past that, but we want you to maybe bring some final words around, maybe short, sharp, and to the point around what's a challenge that you have faced as a leader, as a woman leader, and how have you overcome them? And you can also have some closing words that you would like to share.
You know, I grew up in the era of verkrampte boertjies. I'm not sure whether you understand what that is. You know, I used to work with those white people who used to wear their socks and put a comb. Can you hear me? And put
Yes,
a
you're
comb
coming
in.
through, Rev. You're coming through.
You
Thank
know,
you.
I don't know whether you remember those white people who used to wear short pants with socks, long socks, and they put a comb on the thing here. I used to work with those and I would be often the only black woman who is manager with them. And just to cut a long story short, we had one time a boss barat, and this I was working for this company, and the director of the company was coming from Britain, and he did not know English. So at this thing, everybody was given an area of report where you're going to be reporting on. And we got there, and this 15 of us at this man committee, but it was a strategic meeting. So we get there, and these three of the people who stand up and address, they speak in Afrikaans. And I can see this guy does not know what they're saying. I can't hear properly also. And then I wrote him a note and I said, why don't you put ask for a break? Then he asked for a break. And I said to him, do you want me to solve them for you? And he said, what can you do? I said, close off this thing. Tell us to go for lunch break for the day. Allow me to print. Ask the people in the hotel to allow me to print. I went and I did my presentation in Setswana, translated it from English into Setswana. The following day, I did the presentation in Setswana, and they tried to stop me. The only one who had the English version was him and the secretary. Me, I had and everybody else, the 14 other guys, had that report. And when they tried to say, I just said to him, I need protection. And he said, you continue. They've been saying it in the Africans and whatever. But that for me was how I learned to stand up to the bullies, because my dad taught me. My dad said to me, white people don't study, they don't learn, they don't read. It is their skin that helps them. Don't ever be scared. So it was like that. But then also in the church, you find in the church where it is patriarchy, whether it is the symbols, whether it is the language, whether it is just the place that the rapport of the place says to you, you're not welcome here. But it helps you to understand that it's not really about proving brilliance, because you look at people and you know that I maybe I am more competent than most of the people here. So it's not about whether you are intelligent. It is about resilience. It is about, when you can stand your ground. It is about sometimes when people expect that you will talk and you keep quiet. And when they expect you to keep quiet and then you talk. So I sort of, it was the time that that kind of impression, but it also because, like you are saying, guys were saying here, that you grew up around women who were very strong, strengthened by the struggles that they were having, strengthened by being the women who were remaining with children when husbands were away. And you saw in the communities that women were standing up for the things that they were supposed to do. So women never actually gave up. So that gave us the strength to continue and to understand how to self-manage. So it was sort of the impression that you had from the communities in which you grow, but also that faith in ministry helps you a lot. Often you are faced with circumstances or situations that you don't know how you're going to do, and and you sit there. Sometimes you are in a service, and they preach on something that really speak so terribly wrong against you and against females and whatever. But the studies with I think it was started with my honors, when I did the hermeneutics of suspicion, then it actually taught me that you really do not have to respond, to react to things. You have to listen and to know where people are coming from. You know how ignorant people are. You know how a patriarchy has actually paralyzed even their thinking. So you learn to not to take things personal, but to understand that even though God calls people, He does not change them into robots. And I learned in my ministry that I must ask God to help me hear what God wants me to hear. And anything else, any chaff that I'm not supposed to hear, I must not hear. And it must not agitate. It must not agitate me. So it
Rev,
has really,
we could go on with you for a while longer.
yeah,
I just want to pause and have people reflect on that piece of,
yeah,
for me to hear Reverend Storia going through her journey starting in the 1950s. You can imagine the amount of history she herself carries with her. I mean, Rev, soon we'll have to call you a great ancestor. But we respect at 70 next year the journey,
I
and yet
am,
for
and
you to say,
I'm celebrating it. All of you are welcome. I'm
"Yeah,
celebrating my 70. I'm
I'm
never going to
coming,
be
I'm
70
coming, I'm
again.
coming. Guys, you heard it. We're all here. Anissa,
You are all
Marisha,
invited.
we welcome to the
The
celebration.
14th,
If you need me
the
to bring
14th,
We
the
if you
heard
need
14th
me
of
to
that.
bring my
February,
own meal along, I will.
the 14th of February, it will be a Sunday.
Hey,
In
hey,
fact,
hey, hey,
Steph,
hey.
if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken, our next session would be November, and then thereafter it would fall right in the middle of February. So the timing is quite good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
that will
so
be
friends,
nice.
let's just show some love to these people. I think the takeout there is from Reverend Storia saying to us, don't take it personally. Rev, what's it hermeneutics that you studied? Hermeneutics of suspicion.
Yeah, the one that I was doing the humanities of suspicion, but also I fell in love with a theory of reconstruction.
Wow.
And that theory, helps you to deconstruct first, and then you can reconstruct. But it also, how to deal with language, how to deal. It actually says language does not only convey meaning. It forms actually it conditions experience. So
Sure.
sometimes it is what you know that makes you think the way and be the way that you are. And it cannot be that what you know and I don't know must affect me. I can allow you to be as ignorant as you like. And my dad used to say to me, sometimes you can open your mouth and tell people how ignorant you are, or you can keep quiet and keep them guessing. So sometimes it's just to keep quiet and you allow everybody to expose themselves. And patriarchal people, our patriarchs, likes to speak a lot and expose themselves. Then
Sure.
you don't have to tell them. You don't have to say to them, I know that you are weakness and whatever. You leave them. They will find out one day. The aha moment will come one day and they realize this person have always known, or there is nothing within me, you know. So I think sometimes the problem is that we want to react to each and everything. Some things you can let go, you know. Even if you are right, even if you know the answer, you keep quiet. I mean, that's how I even the Pretoria, the Sinoville things, I worked with people who were undermining like you cannot believe. But I kept them quiet in one word. When they told me about how educated they are, SARS, whatever, and this, and I said to them, I am your spiritual director. And I've not heard any one of you told me about spiritual direction. So if you're not spiritual director, I'm sent here to become your spiritual director. Sit back and listen and learn what does it mean.
Sure.
And I'm not here to come and take your house and whatever. So, you know, so it helped me. It used me to prepare, you know, to lead the gift and the grace of being leading powerful people and living in a patriarchy is that you learn how to plan, you know how to prepare, you know that I'll be with Seth. Seth is difficult. I will be with Marisha. Marisha will be nice. I'm with whoever. These people will be like this. So when you get into a meeting, you already know whatever is going, what bullets are going to come in from where, and you're already ready. You know, and you swallow
Guys,
hard.
I just
Seth.
want
You
to
will
say
swallow hard.
in my own telling there, that's only a story or story. I'm not difficult, but I get you, Rev. You got to know who the people are in the room. So
Yes.
Anissa, Marisha, and Storia, thank you. Don't take the struggle personally. Be planned, be prepared, be prioritized, be purposeful around what it is that you're trying to accomplish in gender justice work, in mobilizing in the spirit of those that marched on 9th August 1956. 70 years later, here we have 7 decades, a celebration of those voices. Let's show some love and appreciate Marisha, Anissa, and Reverend Storia this morning. Thank you, dear friends, for sharing with us in this time of a panel discussion. Anissa, back to you. And then I
And
guess over to
Anissa, I just want to say to Anissa, thank you so much. I'm meeting you for the first time. I don't think we have ever met before. And thank you really for welcoming us and for being with me here. Thank you so much. And thank you, Seth
No,
and Marisa.
thank you to you, Reverend Storia. Also, thank you to Marisha and Seth for always connecting us to people who contribute and add great value to our sessions and to the work that we do.
Okay, Marisha, over to you, I guess, as we go on to the next section.
Yeah, so thank you, Seth, and thank you for everybody for your experiences and sharing. We are running a little bit over time, so this next part, I'm just gonna rush through it a little bit, so please do forgive me, but you will get the notes. But I want to start us off on a positive note. This video of thanking God for women encourages me all the time when I watch it. And it's a little bit of a breather as we shift and move to the next part of we have about an hour and 20 minutes left of our time with you. Seth is going to take us through men and boys as allies in the work of ending gender-based violence and in faith spaces. But I just want to take it from the history that we were talking about, listening to the stories that Storia and Anissa and myself were sharing with you, and then taking it to what is the reality for women right now. But let's start off with this amazing video, which is so encouraging, and then get into some of what are the gaps. And it has already come up as Anissa has shared, has Storia shared, as I was sharing, but just what some of the research is in that. So let's watch this video and then we'll go to some of the research.
We carry water on our heads, babies on our backs, joy in our hips. We till the fertile ground in our garden. In our soul, in our children, we bear fruit. We grow. We watch things grow. We yield fruit in season. We stand in front of fire, on the front lines, in front of desk, behind camera, behind pulpit, in the face of war. We face evil. We face violence. We face obstacles. We stare struggle in the eyes and dare struggle to stare back. We take flour, add water, make tortillas, make porridge, make naan, make dumplings, make biscuits, make do with hands that knead the dough and build the bricks and raise the babies and teach the children and fight poverty. We carry community in our wombs, on our backs, in our arms, in our chest. We take our words and gather them like so many sticks until they ignite. We build fire, and around that fire we sing. We sing because a song always gives birth. We sing because a song always knows where the soul is wounded. We sing because a song always reminds us that we are at home in this body, in this skin. And around that fire, we dance. We dance to the tune of liberation. We dance for the women who have gone before us, for the women who are no longer here, for the women who cannot speak. We dance and fight for justice until every woman is free. Hear the drums. In the rhythm we walk. As we speak our mother tongue, as we say prayers in our mother's tongues, we find our language. In banana leaves and avocado, in mango and yams and rice and seaweed, we tell our stories while braiding the hair of our daughters, while standing in front of a boardroom, while building a business, while frying chicken. We tell our stories while leading the way in protest, while going to school, while performing surgery, because nobody gets to tell our stories for us, because our stories belong to us, because we belong to each other. We raise our hands. We raise our voices. We raise the next generation. We create, we pioneer, we invent, we look ahead, we know the way. We see no path, so we use our feet to build one for the ones who will come after us. We leave a legacy in the sound of our laughter. Every day, we build a world. Thank God for women.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed watching that video. If there was
Wow.
something that,
Sure.
yes, please unmute and just say how you're feeling as you watched it.
Beautiful. Wow. No, that was
You were,
beautiful. Really
thank
affirming.
you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, and it really affirms so much of what we do, who we are as women.
Exactly.
And we indeed thank God for women and for creating women with this great worth and dignity and equality as well. So in the chat, if there was a line, so that's Amina Brown, and that's her poem that she says, or spoken word, as she would say. If there's something that resonated with you, stuck out for you, please do put it on the chat as we move. So that's just to encourage us as we go forward. As we are looking, there's another slide that Seth will put up shortly, and it's called Faith in Her campaign. It's a campaign that's run right now with We Will Speak Out South Africa. I'll put the link on the chat, but it is breaking down these different stories, both men, women, across the range, from different faiths, from different walks of life, who are sharing their life stories about what does leadership mean to them. What are their stories of where they come from when it comes to this whole topic of women and how they have been impacted and where they're at. So please do have a look at it. It's really encouraging. So it's Faith in Her, and it's a campaign that is running right now. So thank you, Seth, for just putting that on. And as you can see, he's got it on the website. So these are some really great little stories, short snippets for you to read, to inspire you. And if you would like to share a contribution, please do email me, and we could you have it shared on our socials and on the campaign as well. Just looking at how your own story has impacted your work and where you come from. So we're trying to build on this, to hearing people's stories and what they've been through, to breaking the silences, to sharing the resources, to empowering each other and encouraging each other. So there's something for you to share as well in your story, and you could have it shared in your socials as well. So as we move, where are we at? And I'm going to quickly post a picture of the Afro Barometer, if Seth could do that, on the screen. And the Afro Barometer just kind of gives us a sense of, and I'm sorry that it's so unclear. It doesn't look, okay, there's it much better now. Thank you, Seth. And to quickly take you through this, you could spend some more time having a look at it, but just in Africa right now, what are the trends and concerns? So the goal is for us to see with the African Union and the agenda is gender equality by 2063. That's what we want to see in all areas of life. And this links with the United Nations SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, which is SDG number 5. However, the target is, Seth, you can just keep it on that screen. People hopefully can copy, and you will get a picture of the PowerPoint as well, so you will have time to look at it. One of the main goals of the UN SDG goals is to really look at how women can become property owners. We shared how often women don't have access to that, even having their own money, their own bank accounts, if they have if they work in that currency. How do they control their productive assets to help reduce violence against women? So the economic aspects of uplifting women in that area. So on paper, 44 of the African countries have ratified the Maputo Protocols on women's rights. If you don't know about the Maputo Protocols, please do have a look at it. It is where the African nations came together and said, what are the rights that we need to be looking at concerning women? And they have put that down, and now that is ratified by 44 of the countries. And then 52 have also ratified the UN Convention of the discrimination against women. But the reality is what this is showing, that there's still gaps. The change is very slow, it's very uneven. Girls are still more likely to be out of school than boys. They're still more likely to be in child marriage, in female genital mutilation, and then obviously families prioritize boys' education. So we still, as women, are trailing behind men in education, in employment, in financial and economic stability, in owning assets, and then in political participation as well. So while most African countries support gender equality in principle, it's not happening in the reality of what we are seeing. We're still lagging behind in that. So even where they think, oh no, women can get into any job now, the reality is it doesn't actually exist, where still the management positions, the positions right on top are reserved for men. Then this is also coupled with, in South Africa, the race agenda as well. So what are the issues that have barely changed in the 10 years? One is the gender-based violence. It's ranked as the most important problem and women's rights issue. Women still face a lot of backlash in politics and in faith leadership. But the bottom line is, while people believe in gender equality, in everyday life it hasn't caught up. So most African people say that there's still lots that needs to be done, and government needs to get on board with us. This then takes us to South Africa. So quickly, if we go to the next slide, here's a study that was done by the UNF. Seth, can you put that on? Thank you. So by UNDP, and by these two authors, and you'll get a copy of this, and they look at Masha Janzi and Ramu Didibi. what they look at is how traditions, both in religion and culture, while it shapes identity, but some of those traditions also blocks equality. So as we move, we'll see that the big picture, we have these goals, but it will take us, you can move, Seth, it will take us 134 years to close the gaps that we are talking about. So not in my generation, not in my daughter's generation, not in her daughter's generation, maybe my great grandchild's generation is when we will see the gender equality gap closed. 134 years. That was in 2024. Okay, so just think about that. So much more needs to be done. So in South Africa, we have the most amazing constitution and laws, but cultural and religious norms still hold women captive in many ways. So as we move, what are the root causes? We mentioned this earlier: patriarchy, culture, and society. It positions men as the authority in family, in work, in governance. That's not a problem, but when it says only men can be that and no other, then it becomes a problem. It's fine if men want to have the authority, but if they say only men can have it, and that's what religion and culture has often done, that they are the ones that have to lead, they have the authority, God has made them that way, and women are made to be, let's say, serving or subservient or a helper. And that's what patriarchy is about. So women are expected to just be caregivers and not really leaders. And then in a HSRC study in South Africa in 2024, 7 out of 10 men believe that women should obey and submit to their husbands, which means that they need to be under their husbands. They cannot be on the equal level. They cannot share the authority or share the leadership. 7 out of 10 men say that they have to be covered or under them. As we move, okay, so as Seth is getting that ready, number 2 is workplace inequality. So it's more than just the pay gap. We know that men are more likely to be paid more for the same position than women. So women earn less than men for the same work, but we also have a lower unemployment rates. And we unrepresented in the senior leadership, like I said. Often women are seen as liabilities. Oh, they're too moody. They, whether it's pregnancy or maternity leave, or whether it's they monthlies, they are blamed for that. They cannot cope. They have issues. So it's often seen like that in the workplace, which affects career growth and then family planning decisions as well. The other root cause is the harmful norms coming from faith and religion. So while faith and religion has so much of positivity and goodness in our spaces and helps us with healing, sometimes the very same tools of sermons, of prayer, of sacred texts that are meant to encourage and give life actually cause harm because of the misinterpretations. So a majority of women in South Africa, just in South Africa, we are about 87% subscribed to some type of religion. And a majority of women are active in faith communities. But many traditions exclude women from those religious leaderships. So we're in the decision-making processes in those faith leaderships. So there's also many restrictions on reproductive rights and contraception, also on sexual SRHR, so sexual reproductive and health rights. And there's also this, it's linked with the economic dependency, that women then have to be economically dependent on a man for all these different aspects when it comes to even their reproductive rights. Women also often follow these norms because of the respect for faith. It's not that they themselves will tell you, no, it's not something that I want to disrespect because my faith tells me this. And I think when we are able to make the informed choices, that's great. But when women are told you can't have a choice, you don't have a choice on it, then it becomes a problem, because that's when the inequalities come into that. Another root cause, if we move on, oh, sorry, we did the three main ones. There's obviously many other contributing factors to this, but in their study, that's what's the three that they picked up. So what can we do? So here's what's important, is to open up the conversation between communities and leaders in challenging the harmful norms. So just starting to talk about it, to women to question, men to ask, why is it this way? Who's it benefiting? Who is it helping? And who's been hurt in this? Who's been marginalized? Or where's that unbalance that Anissa was talking about earlier? Why is it unbalanced? Why is it certain people are prioritized and others not? And who's it benefiting? And then also the gender equality in programs in school and religious spaces. Think about like the Sunday school classes, the place where we initially learn what it means to be a man and woman, how we were created, and some of those stories. Often it comes from the time we were little. Oh, women were the ones, like in my faith, they ate the apple, so they caused the sin, so they're the ones to be blamed. And that's why we're in this situation. So the story of creation from Adam and Eve, that's often what we taught in Sunday school. So women are seen as, oh, you are the ones, the girls, you are the ones that ate the apple. So you are the ones that caused sin to come upon us. Now, that's just one traditional view from the Christian view. But how do we use some of the other cultural traditions that in some ways have been misinterpreted to make women feel less than, and then not just feel, but then being treated as less than as well? So we strengthen laws that protect women while also respecting culture to balance that out. And then how do we implement these great policies that we have, or laws that we have from our Constitution, and then to involve men and boys, which is what Seth is going to take us through as allies. And then the last slide. So the key takeaway from this is balancing this religious cultural identity with human rights. We hold on to the religious values that are life-giving for us. And then we really do critically evaluate the traditions that violate rights. So going forward, we challenge harmful norms. We work with unlearning and relearning in a positive way. What Storia was talking about, deconstructing and reconstructing, and inclusive policies and protocols. What do we do? So we have the policies, but then how do we action it out? And then gender equality is not just an ideal, it must become a reality. Okay, so thank you so much for that. I know we don't have time to have a discussion, but if there are questions, comments, please put it on the chat. You are welcome to do that. What are the gaps? What are we missing in promoting and implementing inclusive leadership? That's what some of those slides were attending to. I'm going to hand back over to Seth, who's going to help us with that part of how do men and boys become allies.
Yes, thank you, Marisha, and thank you to those of you that are here. I want to just do some check-in with you, because as we move from this here, please feel free. The questions that Marisha put in there, what are the gaps, what are missing in promoting and implementing inclusive leadership? You may have some insights as she's shared from research, and we looked at that video. Please feel free. And then also I'd like you to consider, as we go into this next section, of what it is that you consider as allyship. So equal justice benefits us all. I have a picture that I'd like to show you, and in light of this, I want to ask you, what does this mean to you? Okay, so I might be asking some of you to please unmute, because you've been quiet for a very long time. Is this coming through? Can you see this, Marisha?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Just move that. Yes.
Okay, there we go. So equal justice benefits us all, women and men alike. Well, what do you see? I mean, it's kind of an animated tech picture, but I got this online from, it's actually a pic from UN Women. Equal justice benefits us all, women and men alike. And if we're thinking through this picture about allyship, what does being an ally mean to you? What is the work of having an ally? Some of you are social workers, some of you are faith leaders, some of you are corporate workers, some of you are NGO workers. Where do you see the importance of having an ally, and what does it mean to us? Okay. So in light of equal justice benefits us all, women and men alike, what is this picture informing us about allyship? So one thing that I know, which quite just smacks me in my face, it kind of, this allyship is there requiring us to have an ally who brings the balance. So I'm just putting that in for my own response. Maybe Marisha could put my response into the chat box, right? So I see bringing the balance. What do you see? What do you see? And you're welcome to unmute. You're welcome to hit the chat box. I'm actually gonna try and get off the picture so I can see more of the screen with you all. And I'm gonna take it back there. So I'm going to gallery view and see who I can see. Anissa, I see your video on. I'm gonna do some cold calling here. Anissa, yes, what do you see? What do you see?
Okay,
And
so
then
while
I'm gonna ask after Anissa, Nani and Martin Skippers to hear what they are thinking. Yes, Anissa, what are you saying?
Okay, so being a social worker by profession, having worked also with in a therapeutic setting, I've always believed that when you talk about allyship, words like partnership comes in, but for me, the more abstract element or elements are support in relationships. And those are important in any system as such. I always believe, when we talk about roles and responsibilities and rights, one of the most important arts for me are relationships. And it's so important that when we talk about the balance of scales between the genders, it's about raising healthy families. It's about understanding that if we work together, if we build support for each other, then we don't need to be fighting with each other. I remember earlier, Seth, you mentioned something about men feeling like so much attention is being given to women. But I think for me, it's about the respecting genders so that we have a common objective, and that is healthy families, healthy communities, healthy relationships. So that for me would then sum up. It's not a competition. We don't have to be competing. We need to be working together.
So allyship could we take the word working together, Anissa? Allyship. I said bringing the balance, working together. Nani Mojaji, how do you, what would you say about allyship as you look at this picture? Nani, Martin Skippers, Marilisa Duplessis, Cian Sylvester, Tandeka, anybody? My dear colleagues, when you think allyship, maybe we are thinking. Let's check the
I
chat
think
box. Yes, who's speaking? Yes,
it's
Toria.
me.
Yes, please
Yeah.
tell me what you are thinking.
I think it is, yes, working together, but also having a common purpose. Focusing on the same thing. I mean, this is like a justice scale. If one does not do equally what the other has to do, you know, they can never be balanced. So
And now let's
it
read the scripture, and
actually,
maybe we can put
that
that
as
into
an
the chat
ally.
box. Equal doing. So bringing the balance, working together, and equal doing, not just talking. There has to be action.
Yeah. Yes. Equal doing. Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Reverend Storia. Anyone else? You've attended with us. We'd like to hear your voice at this time. I know this group, maybe you all are busy at work and listening, but if there's anyone that would like to, please Please unmute. I don't know. Are they able to unmute? Maybe that could be the issue. Are people able to unmute because we panelists here?
Yes, they are, Seth.
Okay. Melanie, there you are. Melanie, thank you. Please help me along because some of our colleagues are very quiet. What in your work that you're doing, Melanie, what does allyship look like when you think about this picture that I put up? Okay, Melanie is also gone quiet now. So I've tried some cold calling. Please, let's just at least see in the chat box. What are we saying? Are there anyone there? Martin, thank you. Hey, Martina. Sorry, it's Martina Skippers. I think for me is that men and women must agree together about some things. You want to do things together as man and woman. So we think together. There's a togetherness. I'd even say that allyship might need to draw on Ubuntu, the value of Ubuntu. Can you imagine if we talk about allyship for gender justice work as Ubuntu? Rev Story, how does that sound? Did I land on something there to say, let's talk about the value of Ubuntu when we talk about allyship? How does that sound to you, Rev?
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
I think it makes a lot of sense because in an Ubuntu is an understanding. There is what they call social contract. The understanding that my wellness and well-being depends on you just as yours depend on me. And as I was talking about the public motherhood and familial authority, it gives you the authority to hold another accountable. I mean, for me, Ubuntu does not only mean do good, but it also means expect good from other people and the people as they expect good from you. So that will work very well for Alliance.
Wow. Thank you, Reverend Story. Is anyone else in the chat box? Let me ask Anissa and Marisha to see if there was anyone. Litlokonolo Moloro said, I think equal opportunities be granted to both genders, irrespective of positions held. Equality of opportunities. Okay. Yes. Nell Louise Pollock, mutual respect. We need to actually value each other's points of view and listen to the different opinions. Hey, here we go. At least there's some responses. Lizette didn't want to unmute, but put it in the chat box. It is so layered. Wow. I've heard this description mentioned a lot of the times. When I think layered, I think like an onion. It's got those layers. And we have so many issues to tackle. If we are open to being more understanding and accepting of each other's points of views, it would be a good place to start. Drawing out of what Lizette said and what Nell said, let's think about allyship, someone that comes into place and have mutual respect, someone that can come in and be understanding, and someone that can come in. Lizette, your hand is raised. Please unmute. It'd be nice to hear someone else's voice, even if it's just for 30 seconds. Yes, Lizette. Or was that a mistake on the hand being raised? Okay, so cool. We got some descriptions and the wordings. That was a mistake, LOL. So I mean, we're using this word about allyship, and today as we're thinking about allyship, I want to give us some kind of thinkings together around this being, for us to begin to consider what do we understand as being an ally for gender justice? Not any ally, but an ally for gender justice, and how can allyship help? So I put that as, if you want to add into the text box, what do you think about it in your own experience of being an ally for gender justice? Some of you might have experience on doing this work, okay? And then how can allyship help? I'll put that there, and if you want to bring your thoughts in, you may. And then I'll swap to the slide deck again. And let me just minimize this block so that we could get some kind of feedback here. So here's something I put together for you. It's a smaller picture, but if you look at the bracelet, it says, I'm an ally for gender justice. Okay, I'm an ally for gender justice. Let me just hide this panel quickly. That's good. And here we go. An ally is defined as one that is associated with another as a helper, a person or a group that provides assistance and support in an ongoing effort, activity, or struggle. All right. And you're going to get the PDF of these notes as well. And some attributes or characteristics of these allies. They want to learn. So if you're here today and you're part of this conference, a part of this idea of reflecting on the importance of women leadership and gender justice, and more especially, if I can say, because we've set up our conferences with NSMSA to work with faith leaders. If you're a faith leader or faith person, we're needing allies that are wanting to learn. We're not just in it because we think we know everything. Okay, allies, they recognize their barriers and their privileges. So if I am here and I'm with you, I must recognize what are my barriers towards being an ally. Well, for gender justice, the one obvious one is that I'm a man, especially when gender justice seems to be a lot of the time, placing the pain and the hurt on women bodies. This is not to say that men are not affected by gender inequality or gender violence. So when we talk about gender justice, we also have to be clear. This does not exclude men, all right? But as a man, as an ally, as a person working with, do I recognize my barriers and do I recognize my privileges when I'm working with people? Okay, so I got to be cognizant of that. Do allies understand that support comes in diverse ways so that we can come in there and ally is aware that support comes in diverse ways? So there's a multi-stakeholders of people that come alongside to help people, but it comes in diverse ways. Some person can help economically, another person can help emotionally, people can help with counseling, people can help with just being a friend, okay? So this kind of work of allyship. And allies, they let themselves be uncomfortable. Okay, so when we're talking about allies, people that have this ability to be a helper, a person of support. So I'd like to just check in with you all. How is that landing with us as we think about being an ally? Is this landing in our work? Do we notice that we need allyship? So let me just ask you. Anyone would like to just take a moment and want to leave this next 3 minutes for us to talk? You can just pop in, unmute your mics. You don't have to turn on your videos if you don't want to. But anyone would like to just share, allyship. I'm seeing it do this in my organization. I've seen an ally do this kind of work for in my context. Anyone? How do you see allyship working in your context, in your community? Feel free to unmute your mic or hit the chat box. I've tried several times today to bring us in and get our voices out, so I would love to hear from you all.
I said, I think as gender activists and all those, or maybe as faith leaders, it's I think it comes with the territory, because you actually work with very vulnerable people, and your responsibility is to ensure that you lift them up, or you allow them to grow. And you sometimes you have to allow yourself to become uncomfortable, because really you do not want to create dependence, but you'd like a person to grow out of their own. Sometimes it takes a lot of your time, because some people are not even aware of what they're capable of doing sometimes, and you have to help them to realize it by themselves, not you telling them. So it in ministry, and really in I think gender activism, you cannot do it any other way but really to do that.
Wow, thank you, Rev. Lizette says, Side note, we have had quite an increase in calls coming in from male victims of GBV. Yes, as a point of interest. I think we also have responsibility to look out for the males as much as we have to do for females. There are bias on each side. Yes, I love this kind of reflection that when we do gender justice work, a lot of the time people are saying, "Oh, you're just working for the well-being of women." But gender justice work is working for the well-being of us all. Okay. So thank you for putting that in, Lizette. Nell Louise says, allyship and intersectionality goes hand in hand for me. Without allyship, I will be stuck only what I know. It's allyship that helps me grow. All right. So this work of allyship, of coming alongside, of standing in the gap, of willing to stand in solidarity with. When I'm being an ally, I think one of the key learnings that I've noted, it's not about my voice, but how can I amplify the voices of those I'm working with? So not just about me being an ally. Now I'm an ally, you know. But it takes up that shape and form of coaching, of mentoring, of walking alongside, of standing with. Sometimes, if required, I'm the one that will speak for, but not speak for without the permission of. And I may have, the words or the privilege. And what do I do then with that privilege? Right? And this becomes this work of allies. So for a few years, I've been working with the organization of Heartlines, and I think I want to bring in some of that focus around Heartlines and what they have really been about, doing some work around the positive active presence of men. They actually talk about it as APP, and so if you went online and you had a look for the Heartlines Fathers Matter online existence at their webpage, you would see an entire resource that's built around engaging men, and not just engaging men for men's sake, but the fact that having men being active, positive, and present can be in some way an allyship for children and the well-being of children, and an allyship for women and mothers of children or the partners of men, and for society in general. And so let me take you there. I want to show you their site, because we can via technology. So if you went to heartlines.org.za, you can have a look at Fathers Matter. And when we think about this is the question that they ask. What if we could have father absence in a generation? And this is what they say. When fathers and father figures are present and positively engaged, children thrive academically, financially, physically, and emotionally, and are less likely to face mental health challenges, addiction, and violence. And so, friends, this work that Heartlines is doing is encouraging the active, positive presence of fathers and father figures. It is the largest campaign of its kind in Africa. And as you can see, even in their live stake, this is what is going on. 2.5 million people have watched a series of films, short series that really calls out for the active, positive presence of men and fathers. They have a user WhatsApp coach. This is a WhatsApp resource that we can engage, and they've got 12,000 people connected to that, largely talking to men about their active, positive presence. 26,000 people reached out through face-to-face programs and partner organizations in their network. And so, as you can see, the resources in this campaign are for men, for women, for organizations, and there are video materials that have been brought in play that we can see. Fathers Matter changed my life. Here's a video that we could have a look right now.
Really changed my life, changed my mindset. Me growing up as a child in a single parent home with a father that just abandoned us and just never communicated, never visited. It was very hard for me to understand. And then when I had my second child, out of the sudden, all of a sudden my father reached out to me, and he started communicating, and he started phoning me, and I didn't understand why, what's happening. And then he mentioned he was doing the Heartlines Fathers Matter program.
So there is a participant that attended one of these programs, and here's another participant that
I've been inspired now. Like being a father, I need to work hard, otherwise, and being present to my family. Thank you.
So just some resources. I think fathers are important because in life, when he's not present, you think that life would be easier if he was around. Okay, and this is a girl, 13 to 16-year-old group in Gauteng. There's these resources, and I submit them to you because they are resources that are on. So these are the trailers put together. So have a look at this.
lo msangano wenzo lo mfana ubaba mina beyangeka umele.
So your father is a very important person.
Yeah, he's always busy. It sucks.
Scholarship. It's your bokamoso. It ba wana challenge ga.
Don't mess this up, okay?
When I leave my sister to my shop,
Your circumstances does not dictate your destination.
So a range of resources they put together to help us in our communities and our societies from Heartlines, where in the work that I've been doing, it's really been allowing us to engage with men and fathers and have the conversation about how do we engage boys. And so the topics that come up there is around, positive masculinity and transforming masculinity. And so today, as we think about it, where is it that we ourselves could be, finding ways to build the work of allyship, but also build in where we work with many times the reality of finding a way to engage men and engaging men as allies. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be engaging anyone else, but the reality is that we need to call men to be part of the journey and work with us. Let me cross over to this video that could be quite a reality check-in of talking about, what's the best a man can get. So have a look at this video resource. And it's from a Gillette ad that we found some years ago in some of the work we've done with the Faith Leaders Gender Transformation Program. So enjoy this with me as we think about what are some of the pains and the traumas that men are facing in our society.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it? We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy?
What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
But she says we've crossed the line.
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie.
Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool, not cool.
Some already are. In ways big and small.
And I'll ask. I'll also try and send the link out in a minute. So as we think about that, and some of the notions that you would have heard is what are the concepts that we are teaching our young boys and men. apologize, the video didn't run as we planned. And so as we think about the topic of allyship, the focus then becomes for us to, be aware of some of the realities of life. A colleague of ours coming out of the work of Sonke Gender Justice, Beatrice Onoje, in the movement of Men Engage in Nigeria, says, while I once concentrated solely on women's empowerment and resilience within male-dominated systems, I now see the importance of engaging men in the conversation, encouraging them to redefine their own roles and responsibilities in a more positive light. And just again, this work around the importance of engaging men as allies. In the language of some of the work that's been done in the Philippines, they say engaging men meaningfully in gender transformation. And there's a beautiful project that we looked at of work being done in the Philippines that has taken place. When we think about messaging, these are some of the messaging that there's 9 ways for men to be actively involved in women's rights. And so let me show you that. I don't think I'll talk it through all just because of time, but these are, communicate with women and girls. Start with yourself. Okay, this is the kind of advice that we are given. Learn about the movement. Avoid content normalizing violence. Support women's organizations. Remember, women are the focus. Reject sexist content and hate speech. Do not be a bystander. Maintain long-term support. So 9 ways for men who are men that are committed to gender justice to be actively involved in women's rights. And I think, like one of our colleagues said, where we say, remember, the focus is on women, there are times that the focus has to be on the well-being of men. And so think about that as well. How traumatized, how diminished in their humanity have men become when they are actively involved in violence, that is not just violence on themselves, but violence on their loved ones, violence in their community. In the faith action space, I've loved this resource, which says ways we can make a difference in our society plagued by GBV. And I'd say this now more than just men, but back to the topic of the broader topic of all of us being allies. In the faith sector, this is important. We as faith leaders and faith-inspired people need to acknowledge that GBV is a sin. It's a sin. This is a no-no. This is a social ill. It's a social evil. We teach mutual respect. We are all created in God's image, right? So no one is less than in our faith construct, in the way we understand, faith. Have conversations around male privilege. This is an important part within the context of us shifting the narrative. How religion has at times been misused to justify male privilege and excuse male violence. So this is the call that is being made. Transform your organization to ensure equal opportunities for and inclusion of all. Power shared is power doubled. Love shared is God's love. Ask different questions. Ask the perpetrator why they did such a thing, not the survivor how they caused it. Don't try and go at it alone. Work with other service providers to realize the aims of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. That's a resource that we've carried with us, and I offer it to you. The last point of this saying, don't try and go at it alone. Today, we have partners of We Will Speak Out, National Shelter Movement of South Africa, Heartline's Fathers Matter. Some of the resources that we've drawn in, even on the faith action spaces, UN Women and a Generation of Equality. With Reverend Storia being here today, we've got her own role within the South African Council of Churches in the Gauteng province. So we need more people. And some of you that are here as well, it builds in the collective. So don't do this work alone. Make connections so that we can continue the walk towards gender justice. Friends, this is the last point, and I'd like you to really, I'm going to get off a slide deck in a while, but let me just copy this in because I want to put it in the chat box. So So this is where we need you to be thinking and working with us now as we move to our close. And I hope you have enjoyed being with us. This is what I need you to kind of think about as a takeaway, a collective commitment and practical next steps. What am I encouraged and challenged personally by? So you could say personally or professionally, but feel free to, put that in. I sense a call and priority to, well, to do what? What do you sense? And after going through this session with us, a sensing of where you at and what you feel a call and priority for. And then lastly, I am committed to. So let's think about what we'd like to do in the context of the space with our collective commitments and practical next steps. I'll bring in a video that I had prepped after this, which is the last piece of a tool that I use within the Heartline space called Fathers Matter Coach. I've showed it to you in the brief, but I'll play that video. But let's take a moment to consider this now on our collective commitment and practical next steps. And anyone who's willing to talk to me or be thinking about it, what are you encouraged or challenged by? What are you sensing? Call you welcome to do that as well. I'd love to hear some voices. So let me begin with the ones that I know that are prepped to talk. Anissa, you've been a part of it today. We are actually part of the conference in sharing. But what's popping up in your mind and your heart about maybe what you sense or what you're encouraged by? Storia as well, if you could share, and Marisha, and then I'll ask some of the participants to take a moment to share, either in the text box, and I would love to see more people speaking. But Anissa, would you like to take a go at it? What are you sensing?
Okay, so that's in a way I would say like loaded questions, Seth. Yeah, it takes a lot of reflections, I think. Encouraged and challenged. I think I'm encouraged by, and I have to say a special acknowledgement to all the activists, all the advocates, all the social workers, all the shelter staff, all the people who are working in the sector, even the religious leaders, the faith-based sector, for all your contributions. That helps to make a difference. We may not always, when it comes to gender-based violence, and even when we look at stats, there's a tendency, not, there's a possibility that we become despondent. And that again would speak to the challenges. And when we look at what are the gaps, we have our Indaba coming up in September. We always look at what are the gaps. We have funding issues. We have lack of resources. We have so many of those difficulties. We still in the prevention on the prevention level, we have a lot of work that still needs to be done. We're dealing with intergenerational trauma that we need to start shifting. It's going to take a long time. But yes, like I said, I think I'm encouraged by the fact that there are committed people and groups that are trying to address that. And also, I think I'm encouraged by the fact, and bring it back just to some of the things you raised around the fathers matter, is that there are good fathers out there. There are good role models. One of our previous sessions, Seth, we had looked at the role of fathers, and fortunately, most of us could reflect on the positive memories we had of our fathers and the roles they played in our lives. So yes, it reinforces the role of our fathers, but it also speaks to the fact that many of us do have those positive experiences with our dads. Um, I s- and I think for me, the priority is safety. I think it still remains safety, and whether it be individual safety, collective safety, community safety, safety of women, safety of our children. But when we talk about, we always start, and Marisha has taken that on for every session, about the container and the safe space. Is, I learned some time ago about, if you want the safe space, you've got to be a safe space. And that is a good start point. And when we work with gender-based violence, it takes a lot of work also to shift the trauma into a safe space. And how do we do that?
Wow. So Nisa is definitely thinking deeply about this. I just in being a part of you all here, I want to say, yes, what struck me today is in the work that I'm doing as a faith leader, try to avoid taking things personally. Because I think you can easily do this work around gender justice, around allyship, and then you get connected to the work and you personally become offended. And Reverend Storia put that out, that I'm in the place, and instead of taking offense personally, I'm getting planned, I'm getting practiced, I'm getting purposeful, I'm prioritizing. I can't fight every battle. I can't lose it on everything that I see. And this is a hard one for those of us who are activistic and we want to speak out. Yes, do speak out. I don't think we must be silent, but also know what it is that we're gonna really turn up the heat on, and where we're gonna actually say, well, let those people journey with their own ignorance, but I'm here as a shoulder to lean on. But just prioritizing, and so negating that whole role. So that's something for me that I'm encouraged and challenged by. Not taking the fight personally. Yes, it will hit our hearts, but I think in the way that I take it personally and I come out in a bad response. So I'd even extend what Storia said and shared with me, that I will take it personally, but I'm not going to take it personally as an offense. If I am becoming offended, I need to be creative and innovative in how I present, in places where people might be ignorant or maybe arrogant about their beliefs, especially when it comes to dehumanizing others. Okay, I see there's some other voices in the chat box which I'm grateful for. Anissa, can I ask you to help me capture? I think I lost track of which one comes where. Would you like to read the chat box?
Yes, sure. Okay, so I'm going to go back. We do have quite a few comments, and it's a good thing. Okay, so I'm gonna go back, right? So Nelouise, her last comment was on allyship, and then we're going to move on to Pamela, right? I'm not sure if I missed that one, but I think we at Pamela, am I right, Seth? So in one of my caseloads, Pamela shares, I came across a female client who was told that women should not make financial decisions in the household. So as a social worker, I had to challenge this belief respectfully, support the client's voice in decision making, and promote equal participation and dignity. So I believe that as social workers, allyship means not speaking over people, but standing beside them, amplifying their voices, challenging injustice, and supporting their ability to advocate for themselves. So I know we've covered allyship a bit, but I think it's important to just connect with some of the comments, and I also think that Pamela's share was quite deep, and it's quite important. You raised quite a few things. Thanks for that, Pamela. Okay, Kashifa says, I think that we as GBV activists need to network together to have a holistic healing. We need to refer and have allyship who stand against gender injustice. So I know that also with us working in the space, with Seth, with Marisha, and with a whole lot of other stakeholders. And I mentioned our Indaba. Collaboration is so important. We cannot do it alone. One of the reasons, in fact, why the National Shelter Movement of South Africa was even established was the fact that shelters were working in silos. And we often do this. We'll attend conferences, seminars, but at the end of the day, the feel is we go back and we continue with our own work. And I think it's so important that when we build those relationships, to continue them, to sustain them, if we're going to make a difference, we need each other to make a difference. And earlier, when we looked at the definition of allyship and what it means, we spoke about having a common objective, working towards something that's shared. And I know that we share that. We just get stuck in our ruts and we carry on with our everyday tasks. And I think now and again, we need a reminder of the importance of allyship and collaboration and partnership and networking, because it's so important to share our resources, to share our knowledge, share our spaces, because collectively we can make that difference. And going back to the march in 1956, it's another demonstration, and I use that word as fun, the demonstration that we need to join forces and be heard, that collective voice, and how loud we make our voices and even our presence. And stronger our presence, the more effective we can be. Okay, so I sidetracked a little bit there, but I'm going back to Pamela, who says growing up in households where boys, and that brings us then to the topic of the fathers matter and the gender and engaging men and boys. Growing up in households where boys are taught that a man does not cry can make it challenging to engage with boys around their emotions. These messages can teach boys to suppress vulnerability and may make it difficult for them to identify, express, and communicate their feelings. And this is important. I know, Seth, you also posted something about boys can cry, something to that effect. The National Shelter Movement of South Africa also just completed a pilot for boys 8 to 11 years, looking at healing and thriving and also being able to communicate and express with a view of breaking the cycle of violence. I know the Teddy Bear Foundation. So again, when we talk about allyship, there's quite a few, and we can see lots of organizations doing work in their own spaces. I know Sarki Bartman in the Western Cape also does work with boys. So yes, it's important for us to find out who's doing what and how we can partner, how we can use those resources and tools and develop them further. Okay, then Marisha says, yes, very true, Pamela. And then when they repress their emotions, often it does come out in anger, and sometimes there's violence, right? So again, we're saying giving boys the opportunity to express themselves in positive ways, finding healthy channels to express themselves so that it doesn't become violent. Nelouise is saying we cannot fight gender-based violence and femicide without getting men involved. In our country, with our history of apartheid and inequality and economic hardships, it's vital to have men fighting next to us. Men need to stand up too. Yes. We always say gender-based violence and femicide is not a women's issue. It's a societal issue. It's a human rights issue. And we cannot exclude men from that issue, right? Lizette is saying, I agree, Pamela, and media does not help. There's a massive influence coming from online influencers and musicians. Okay, so, again, also when it comes to social media and the virtual platform, a lot of attention in recent times being given to technology facilitated gender-based violence. And also on the flip side, digital activism and how can we use the virtual space, the online space, to get our voices across. So yes, you're right, Lizette. Yes, there are lots of social media influences, not all positive, lots of negative also, but how can we use that space and counter that? So that's what also we may need to be looking at. Kashfa also says men's voices need to be heard by saying no to gender-based violence and violence that happens in the community. They need to play a part in ending GBV. Yeah, so we living unfortunately in a violent country where anger is and things even like road rage. And I don't think we have enough. When I say, I think we're becoming almost immune or accepting of violence and anger as ways of expressing dissatisfaction. So I think we need to really look at our methods. Are they constructive? Seth is saying, I'm encouraging. Oh, sorry, those are your questions, Seth. Seth, there is a gentleman named Darren Samuels that has gone a journey with his son, Devin Samuels. He speaks a lot about healthy relationships. I think we would align. Okay, so again, the allyship. So let's look at that. I think, Seth, maybe that's a connection we could look at. Thank you for that, Lizette. Then Louise is saying, I'm encouraged by the younger generation, like my son and his friends, all in their 20s of different faiths, does not buy into the boys will be boys culture. I have hope that they will be ones who will. I'm not sure if you're saying will create the safe spaces for women in the future, Louise, but yes, you're right. So well done on that, Louise, for being an influencing mum. It's important for us to look at the messages we're sending our children, both verbally and in our actions. Thank you for that, Louise. Celestine is saying the teaching of the historic march and the 4 women who became a voice for others encouraged me as a woman and social workers to go out and become safe spaces to other women, to be a mentor and to be an advocate for vulnerable, especially to victims of gender-based violence. So there we have it. I think I've covered
Thank you.
everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Anissa, and thank you, colleagues, for sharing in the chat box. By way of your takeouts, and if you have a final word, we tried to guide some practical steps. But I want to encourage you that some of the journey of making these sessions or being online together may it affect our personal lives as well as our professional lives, our faith lives. May we feel, that there is a sense that we have a calling to get invested and involved with the work of gender justice, and building on for the well-being of children and women and men and families and society. I think it is still scary to think about, even in that video that we watched, where Sophie de Bruyn says, "Here we marched for the freedoms, and yet today women are entrapped and prisoners in their own homes." Okay, so some of the traumas that we see happening around domestic violence and gender-based violence hurts from one generation to the next. And in my own faith journey, that's not what we want. We don't want to pass curses and harmful behavior and unhealthy social norms from one generation to the next. No, we don't. We actually want to pass from one generation to the next healthy norms, countercultural narratives that help our children, help women, help men, help our adults, help our grand adults to write stories of hope and healing, of social justice and gender justice. One of the reflections that I was asked to look at for Heritage Month, Anissa and Marisha, was around how do we reshape institutions, and institutions of learning and institutions of faith pop up in my journey. It's not easy to reshape institutions because institutions have a lot to do with how people are informed. Religion and theology can be quite powerful impulses in people's lives, quite powerful influences in people's lives. So those of us who are here as faith leaders and are part of the institutions of religion and faith, may we do receive, a faith inspiration to challenge the unhealthy social norms and teachings and policies and procedures that are taking place in our institutions. The women of 9th August 1956 stood up against the government as an institution. They mobilized 20,000 and more. Obviously, there were 20,000 that were there. But I return to that. Imagine 30 minutes of silence. My daughter returned from the south of France in a place called Thésée just a few weeks ago. And she taught us about her own journey with silence and prayer and reflective music. But how powerful silence can be. It might seem to us that, it has no effect, but 30 minutes of silence, even in that video today that we played, it spoke loudly. So, I'm also reminded of Dr. King that spoke about the embrace of nonviolence. So in doing this work of justice, let us be sure that we don't employ the tactics of a violent empire and start being, start violating the rights of other people in our pursuit of justice. So let us be aware of that as well. So thank you, friends, for being with us. If you have anything else you want to add in the chat box, please feel free to do so. I have a last video resource in light of the allyship that I'm speaking to you about. And it is a resource that has to do with, again, mobilizing this work around the active positive presence of men. But it is a resource that is actually what they spoke about there of the WhatsApp chat. So check this out. It's talking about a Fathers Matter coach. And what's been now adopted by men, women, young adults, children who are, unfortunately being a child parent to their own siblings, okay? But it's a coach that has allowed people online access to think about how they become allies of the well-being of children, of men and women in society. So check this out.
Being a father or father figure can be tough, right? You want to be active and present, but don't always know how. Well, that's why every father needs a coach. The Fathers Matter WhatsApp coach. There to help you become the father you've always wanted to be. And it's easy. The coach is best used with your mobile phone, but there are multiple ways to access it. Go to fatherscoach.co.za on your desktop and click Continue to Chat, or via your browser on your mobile device. Or add 060-058-2107 to your contacts as Fathers Matter Coach. Then you're ready to start chatting. WhatsApp hi and then select Let's Get Started and complete your details. The coach can train you in 3 ways. First, get ideas. You can get tips about being a father, about your child, and about being a father figure. Second, answer your questions. Ask any fathering related questions and our coach will give you an answer in your preferred language. Third, help you stay motivated. You will receive regular tips and communication to keep on top of your game as a father. Whenever you want to access the menu again, just send hi, and you can proceed to get tips and have your questions answered. So, Training starts today. Say yes to this new journey as a present and active father. From your mobile device, visit fatherscoach.co.za or just WhatsApp hi to 060 058 2107.
Yes, everyone. So thank you for watching that. That's the last resource piece that I had linked to that allyship and doing work around men and boys and fathers. And it's a resource to you. Please feel free to use it in your organizations, and it comes as a free resource. So please check out Fathers Matter Coach when we talk about the active, positive presence of men. Yes, thank you, Kashifa. Thank you, very informative. Thank you so much. This was very much informative. We're down to the wire on our closing. So, yes, over to my colleagues, Marisha and Anissa. It's time to close out.
Thank you, Seth. That's an awesome resource to have to support fathers. Thank you for sharing that with us, Seth. Marisha, some closing comments?
Thank you, Nisa. And if Reverend Story is here as well, I think we just get a final 1 minute from each of us to close. From my side, I just want to say thank you to everybody and thank you to National Shelter Movement. And we will speak out for just allowing us to have this conversation. But also what I think, what I was challenged by, Storia saying, you know, when to listen and when to talk. That was important for me, and I think I have to use that more often in this navigation of the balancing between, you know, and the justice work that I'm doing. But also, I think I recognize, I don't know whether others feel like this, but how overwhelming it is during Women's Month and during the 16 days about the 100 billion things that we are called to do as women, because, you know, they want a focus on this, and just in our lives, whether it's motherhood or womanhood or being present for people, there's a lot of pressure on us. So I would say to please, for each of us to look at radical care and rest. And radical care means, you know, taking care of ourselves so that we can be present and be there for others, and be able to deal with some of our own things, whether it's our pains or traumas, so that we don't replicate or pass that on, like Seth was saying, to another generation, but also to rest well. And we feel guilty about, as women, to rest and to say, you know, we need the time to rest. Because it's been said to us that we must be productive at all costs. And if we're not productive, then we are not worth it and we are not good enough. And so I really encourage us and myself, I'm taking this because it feels so much this week with so many things, that sometimes we just need to rest, and people need to understand why it's so important. Because as women, we've been told too many times, you know, you have to keep being serving, you have to give of yourself, and that's your worth, and that's how good you do as a mother or as a woman. So please take care of yourselves and rest well, and please do radical care for yourself, and then you could do that for others.
Thanks for that reminder, Marisha. Every day in our workspaces, we need to remind ourselves of that, because we talk it and we don't always walk it. On my side, you know, when Seth was speaking about peaceful action and, you know, the themes for today's session for me, if I look at the words leadership, justice, fathers matter, allyship, I was thinking about leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who worked hard for justice. They fought for peace. And even in the last sermon spoke of the role of women and were excellent demonstrations of leadership, because the value of leadership only comes from serving others. So I want to leave you on that. And I want to wish you all a pleasant day going forward. So we close Women's Month and then we step into spring, but we also step into Heritage Day, which makes everything we covered today so well encompassing and well-rounded. Thank you to each of our facilitators, to each of our participants for an awesome session. That's the word you used, Seth, when we started. You're looking forward to an awesome session. And I personally think that that's exactly what we had. So thank you, everybody. Take care, and we look forward to you at our next session. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Keep well.